What's going on, Los Angeles? Happy Friday. Welcome in to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network. Always on Friday live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you all for tuning in, making us a part of your day. I'm Ryan Dyrud, joined as always by my co-host, the Madman, Jamal. Madni, what's up, brother? How are we doing today?
Doing well. Happy Friday, Ryan, to you and to all our listeners out there. Hope everyone has a great Friday and a great weekend.
Yeah, we're going to kick the weekend off right by doing this show. So thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, wherever you listen. We are on YouTube at LAFB Network and, of course, on our main site where everything lives, LAFBnetwork.com. But we got a great show for you today. We're talking a little Chargers minicamp. Derwin James, contract negotiations, about him. Will he be the highest paid safety? We're going to kind of talk a little bit about the new media model and kind of how we view ourselves in this landscape and about some of the other media proprieties out there. Chris Sims, former quarterback, came out with his QB list, which is always fun because his is always a little different than the status quo, which makes it interesting to talk about. And then finally, we are going to wrap up with Phil Steele. Also, another list came out with his All-American rankings that we will talk about where some Bruins and Trojans fall on that list and whether we agree or disagree. But show today brought to you as always by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today on mobile or desktop. Use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Get a 50% welcome bonus. NBA finals are done. Congrats to the Warriors. But NHL is still just getting going. Game 2 on Saturday. My Avalanche are up 1-0, so you can bet on that series. Baseball, I kind of forget baseball's going on, but baseball's in full swing. So if you want to bet on baseball, go for it. U.S. Open is going on right now. One of my favorite tournaments, especially because it lands right on Father's Day, the finale. And obviously, you can just bet on futures for the NFL season coming up. So it's betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Get a 50% welcome bonus. All right, Jamal. As always now, before we get going, 60-second soapbox. Anything you want to jump in and talk about? I got a funny one today, actually. So let's serious.
Well, Ryan, I wanted to kind of use my time to congratulate the Golden State Warriors and their fan base for a fourth championship. And, I think it's a great story because I see a lot of parallels with Steph Curry and the Warriors and the late, great Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. And it's a testament to loyalty matters in sports. And when you sort of commit to a franchise and an organization and you go through the ups, you go through the downs, and then you go through the revival again and build around it, it's just so satisfying, a victory. And, the love and the appreciation and the adoration that you get when you stick with one team really is unparalleled. And so the relationship that LA has with Kobe and the Bay Area has with Steph, that's sometimes that gets lost in the LeBron, Kevin Durant model of things. And so just congratulations to the Warriors and to Steph Curry for a fourth championship. And, it's great to see them back on top and excited for my Lakers to challenge them again next year.
Yeah. Hats off. Kudos. Shout out to my Nuggets, who 3 years in a row, they've lost in the playoffs to the Western Conference champion. And 2 of the 3 years that team ended up winning the entire thing. So they got beat by the best, I guess. That's our consolation. At least the Nuggets got beat by the best.
No doubt. And I think the Nuggets are going to be right at the top of the Western Conference next year, Ryan, when, you get Jamal Murray back, Michael Porter Jr. back. So I think it's going to be a really compelling Western Conference next year for sure.
I hope. So, all right, my 60-second soapbox. So my wife, Monica, is a huge prankster. Loves pranking me, scaring me, whatever you want to call it. Making me jump out of my shorts, anything. That's been our whole lives together. And so, what was this, yesterday or Wednesday? I can't remember what day, but anyway, Mia's already in bed, so it's late. I'm shocked she even attempted this. I go use the restroom, and luckily I'm a gentleman, and even though I've been married now almost 5 years, I still always pick the toilet seat up. It's just, there's 2 ladies in the house. I was trained that way. So I picked the toilet seat up. She had put, those little black cat firecrackers that you throw down and they pop. She had put like 10 Black Cat firecrackers on the toilet bowl. So if I sat down, it would have been like an explosion.
Holy
Luckily, I
cow.
found them, but I'm like, what are you doing? First of all, that would have scared the living S out of me. Second of all, our daughter's finally asleep like 10 feet away. That would have woken her up, and she's just dying laughing in the hallway. Like, I can't believe you didn't sit down. Like, you always are in the restroom 30 minutes, and this one time you didn't. So
That's
that's
amazing.
my story. Does Ashley do any pranks or no?
No, Ryan, you're a better man than me in terms of bathroom awareness, I would say. When I'm going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I'm just so asleep that, you could have a bull, in the bathroom and I wouldn't be able to tell. So kudos to you for the awareness.
Well, I got lucky, I guess. So lucky, and my wife was very disappointed because it would have been funny. I'll give her credit, but I would have probably had a heart attack. I don't know if I'd be doing the show today. But anyway, so that's what I'll say there. Let's jump now into some football talk, Jamal. Let's start with the Chargers. We haven't talked a ton about the Chargers lately. They had their mini camp a week after the Rams. So obviously we were at Rams mini camp and able to digest kind of what they did. Chargers camp, we were not in attendance for, but we were able to follow from afar, read some good articles about people that were there. And so, we can talk some takeaways from it. Obviously it's, mini camp. There's really not a lot to take away from it. I think some people read into it more than others. But the good thing is everyone was there. No one's holding out or no one. That's always a storyline. Who's there, who's not, and everyone attended. Austin Eckler, I believe, was the only Chargers player to not attend OTAs. Again, zero issue at all, but he was at minicamp, so no concern there. I have a few takeaways that I kind of read about and learned about, but I'll toss it to you first, Jamal. Anything that you take away from, a 2-day mandatory minicamp down in Costa Mesa?
Right. Sometimes it's hard to sort of, come up with anything too definitive when the sample size is that small and it's that early in the process. I do think that there was a lot of anticipation in the air during Chargers minicamp about the Derwin James possible extension. And I think what was very notable was that Minkah Fitzpatrick signed his deal over the course of Chargers minicamp for 4 years, $73 million. And when you look at Fitzpatrick and you compare him to Derwin James, very, very similar players in terms of age, both 25 years old. When you look at them statistically, Derwin James last year was 118 combined tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. Minkah Fitzpatrick was 124 combined tackles, no sacks, 2 interceptions. And so when you look at them as comps to one another, and Fitzpatrick kind of setting essentially that secondary market price, you have to figure now that Derwin James is going to get 4 years, 75. And that's got to be kind of Telesco's thinking moving forward and playing with the cap to sort of understand that. So I think that was more significant to me than anything that really occurred with a couple of drills here and there on the field, is that, okay, now we understand there is a path of clarity in what it's going to take to re-sign Derwin James.
Yeah, it's always funny when those happen for another player, another team, and the Derwin side, Derwin, his agent is, standing ovation, like, okay, we just got more money now because we're gonna set, like, we're at worst he's gonna match Minkah. He's not gonna get under Minkah. He's gonna match it. If anything, he'll go above and beyond and reset the market. And on the Charger side, you got to think, man, we should have been a little hastier to get this done sooner, because now it just cost us a few more million in our books. I think of, like, Justin Simmons with the Broncos. They got him signed kind of earlier on, and now his contract looks so cheap. I mean, he's making $15 million a year, whereas Minkah is making close to 18 now, and Derwin's going to get 18 to 19 probably. So it's all that negotiation strategy and when you get it done and when you don't get it done. And we actually, for fans out there listening, you can text in. We want to get you involved in this conversation. We have a prop bet up on the site, LAFBnetwork.com. If you text Chargers LAFB, all one word, text Chargers LAFB to 31032. We want to know when you think this deal gets done. Does it happen before training camp? Does it happen during training camp? Does it happen after? Does it not happen until next offseason? Do they sweat it out? What do you think, Jamal? Do you think it's done before training camp?
I do. I think it'll be done before training camp, because I think that the Chargers are in a very unique position this year where they've made it very clear that they're going all in much the same way that the Rams are. They've got their superstars in place. There's sort of a clarity of what they need to do in an experience. And the last thing you want is any sort of a holdout hang up or any sort of drama with regards to who may or may not be here moving forward. And I think that cohesiveness and that chemistry is so important. And if anything has been proven time and again in the NFL, it's that windows of opportunity are short and they're fleeting, and you have to take full advantage of them when you have it. And the Chargers are right on the cusp of a window of opportunity. And a couple of $1 million, frankly, is a small, petty price to pay on either side to really put yourself in a position for massive success that the franchise has not seen in nearly 30 years. So for all of those reasons, I think this deal gets done. So there's just total clarity from a team culture and a chemistry standpoint as well.
Yeah, I agree. The last thing they want is, and I don't think Derwin's the type of player that will hold out. I mean, he's still under contract for this season regardless. And I don't think he'd be like, okay, I'm not coming to training camp till the deal's done. But you don't want that cloud hanging over. I mean, just get it done. Last question about that. We talked, I can't remember if it was last episode or 2 episodes about the difference between the cap and ownership cash flow, right? And then how the Rams are always so able to get these huge, massive deals done, but they do it because of they're able to really pay a lot of cash flow that doesn't go against the cap. Chargers are in a very different, situation. I mean, we all know Dean Spanos is getting sued by his sister. It's no secret that while every owner in the NFL is very, very rich, so not making any excuses there, he is one of the lower end owners in the NFL in terms of just straight cash flow. All their money is tied to the Chargers. There's not a secondary business like Kroenke has his real estate business, has his wife who's a heiress to the Walmart throne. The Spanos family is the Chargers, and that is all. Is there any concern that will affect anything because they don't have that same cash flow where they can put a lot of back end, front end, signing bonus, roster bonus money, and it all has to be strictly within the cap and kind of how they work that language with guaranteed money and whatnot? Is that any concern, or you think it's he's just the most important player on this team besides Justin Herbert, so you got to make it happen, and B, they are under the cap and they can make it happen, pushing money down the line and not have to worry about the cash flow?
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, it's an incredible point, and it's so funny you mentioned about Kroenke. I mean, Kroenke might be the only billionaire in the world who married up in life.
Yeah,
so
right?
I mean, when you talk about the Walmart family, there is no wealthier family in the world than the Walmart family. Like if Sam Walton was still alive today, he would far and away be the richest person in the world, way more than Elon and Bezos. And so people kind of forget that Kroenke actually married up in life, which is incredible. But
I'm curious before you, and this is just for fun opinion, how much of that was strategic, like we see in the old days of like the political families or like even the royal families, how you marry to like strategically do it, or how much they actually just fell in love and just got lucky, like, well, we fell in love and we both are very, very rich?
Not knowing the intricacies of their relationship, but Kroenke seems like a very smart guy. So the fact that I have a hard time believing it was 100% love. Let's just put it that way.
To start, at least, right? To start. Yeah. Maybe now it's all love now, but all right, continue on.
No, Ryan, it's a great point. And I think what it does from a Spanos perspective is you have to sort of widen the aperture when it comes to optionality. So if you look at Fitzpatrick's contract of 4 years, 73, there is an expectation that it's about 45 to 50 million guaranteed. Now, if you can't match the guaranteed money, what do you have to do? You really have 2 options. One is you extend the life of the contract and make it a bigger contract, more years, more on a per annual basis. So you're looking at maybe a 5 to 6 year in the 100 to 110 range, potentially, to sort of offset some of the guaranteed money. Or you go much shorter and much bigger, and maybe it becomes a 2-year 40, 2-year 45, 2-year 50. But I think that, that's sort of the ends of extreme when it comes to optionality. But Derwin James is just so important. And like you mentioned, they're under the cap. I really don't think that this is going to be that much of a challenge. And I think he's going to get something that is as much, if not more, than Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I agree. You get it done. Justin Herbert, 2 more years before they're going to have to extend him. So obviously that's in the back of their mind. But I mean, the Rams have obviously proven, but other teams, the Chiefs, other teams have proven you can pay 4 to 5 superstars and make it happen. And then the rest, so as long as they can pay Herbert, Derwin, probably Joey Bosa and that, I don't know if they'll end up extending Khalil Mack. We'll see how this season goes. J.C. Jackson, they already are done with his contract. He's paid for 4 years.
So, you really have 3 anchor contracts, Ryan.
Yeah.
And so I think that you have to sort of strategically say, these are our 3 remaining pillar contracts, and everything else works around them. Let's not sort of be short with the buck here and penny pinch with these 3, because those are our 3 anchors for contention.
Exactly. So I think they get it done, though. But let us know. Like I said, text Chargers LAFB to 31032. You can play the prop in the article. There's actually 2 props in there. Let us know your opinion. You can even just text your opinion after you text in, and we'll read it maybe on the next show. So Chargers LAFB to 31032. But going back a little bit to minicamp, Jamal, just one thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to our next topic was, because again, there's not a lot you can take away from minicamp. There's no pads. They rarely even the Rams don't even throw the ball, but the Chargers did throw the ball. So that's good. Seeing J.C. Jackson and Mike Williams kind of have that competition. The receiver DB battle in training camp is going to be an absolute blast to watch in training camp, which we will definitely be at training camp. So we'll have all the updates for you guys there. But that's just going to be so much fun to watch. But one player in particular, Jamal, that I want to talk about, because there was all this talk in the offseason about the Chargers needing more speed at receiver, right? And there was the question at 17, do they maybe take a receiver there? Right. Whether it was a Chris Olave or a Jameson Williams who can be that burner. Obviously, both were gone before then, and there was a talk, do they trade up to secure one of those? They went with the better pick, in my opinion, getting Zion Johnson. Thank you. I always Williamson in the NBA. I always do that for some reason, but they get Zion to play their guard for the next decade, who's just going to be a phenomenal, phenomenal player. And I said, and I think you agreed, that I believe that they think that they're set at speed with a guy by the name of Jalen Guyton, who everyone knows. And I know he's had some drop issues, but still a very young player. He runs a 4.3 40, so he definitely has the speed to do it. And I've been reading and hearing that, again, it's minicamp, but hearing he's have a tremendous minicamp. Looks much better than he did last year. He's more comfortable in the offense. Justin Herbert and, Chase Daniel, the backup, looks very comfortable throwing him the football. He's also playing gunner on punt team, which adds to his value, because if you're going to have a wide receiver 3 or 4, you want them to add value on special teams and not just be a 15 snap player taking up a roster spot. So if he can be gunner, which obviously utilizes his speed, he's a bigger frame at 6'1", 6'2", 220. So that to me is exciting, because that was the one question mark that a lot of fans had, was a speed receiver, which they didn't address in the draft. And I was like, I think it's just because they have a lot of confidence in who they already have on the roster in Jalen Guyton. Your thoughts on Guyton and what he means to this team and how important he is to this offense?
I think he's huge as, your vertical threat and your number 3 receiver. And I think if recent history in the NFL has shown anything, is that you need 3 viable receiving options to really bring the unpredictability to your offense. And here's where I think the Chargers hit a home run in the draft, especially in those early rounds. Jameson Williams was coming off of a torn ACL in the national championship game. And so to trade a surefire 10-year guard in the NFL, where you had, Zion Johnson at 17, to take a flyer on a Jameson Williams who's got tremendous upside, but you just don't know how he's going to quite respond to that injury, I think was too risky a bet. And I think the other piece with Olave, which was another sexy name in the draft, is Olave is a very smooth route runner, a kind of a 4.38 guy, but he's sort of more of that secondary speed from an acceleration standpoint. He's not one of those guys who's going to, there's 40 time and then there's kind of 20 time. And the thing with Olave is his speed really accelerates from 20 meters to 40 meters, where he really gets kind of a full head of steam. But off of the gun, in terms of just raw vertical threat, I don't think Olave really sort of answers the mail in terms of exactly what the Chargers are looking for, especially when you look at Herbert's arm strength. You need a guy who can just vertically, just on those go routes, just take off and go. And so I think that they have everything they need with Guyton, and I think that they're in a really great spot. I completely agree with you. I'm very high on this kid, and I think the combination of his ability on special teams, the combination of his ability in the offense and the go routes, and you can do some unique things in terms of misdirection, even in the backfield with him. So I think that there's a lot to be excited about. And this is where sometimes, the casual fan gets a little too enamored with sort of the sexy name in the draft. I think the Chargers are right where they're supposed to be.
Yep. Yeah. I think they know the roster, right? They feel confident in their roster and what he can bring. We saw, some great plays him do last year. Now, if we can just get him more involved, and obviously a different style of player, but Josh Palmer going into year 2 at receiver, and heard some great things about his offseason thus far. So I think there's a lot to be excited about this Chargers offense that will just be better, and anchoring that offensive line was the key to make that better. And now we can really see them utilize their speed at receiver, which they already have on the roster. So good stuff there from Minicamp. We do need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll jump into our other 3 topics. So make sure to stay tuned. This is the LA Football Podcast. Talk to you in just a minute. All right, welcome back to the LA Football Show. Ryan Dyrud here with Jamal Madni. Just wrapped up our Chargers and Derwin James minicamp talk. And now let's talk some media, shall we, Jamal? Let's talk some new media, the new age of coverage in today's sports landscape that, it's not what it used to be 20 years ago, where it was a beat writer from the local newspaper, and that was how you consumed your content. It is very different now with the podcast space, with video space, with the fact that everyone, and no matter what their technological savvy is, can buy a microphone and record a show, can start a WordPress website, do all the stuff, which is how we started. And obviously we've grown from there. But let's get into it. What's your kind of thoughts on this new wave of media and how we fit in that?
Yeah, Ryan, I think we're really at the cusp of a complete paradigm shift in terms of sports media. When you think about things like the next generation internet and so forth. But when you talk about sports media in particular, and take Draymond Green, for example, with now his own podcast, and he's sort of recording his impressions and his analysis literally in hotel rooms and locker rooms immediately after the game. Sort of real-time immersion with an athlete. Of course, the things that LeBron is doing with the uninterrupted in the shop. And so there's really this crossover effect that's taking place in sports media, where it's all about players having an opportunity to craft their own narratives, and traditional media outlets needing to interact with those players in a very direct fashion and in a very direct basis. And that's where I think something like LAFB is really at the cutting edge, because we have direct access to players in the NFL and in college. We play sort of the traditional mainstream media game through articles and podcasts and kind of traditional interview style, but we also have this ability to build these deep, meaningful relationships with players moving forward. And so I think it's really at the intersection there where the magic is really going to happen. And I think it really is going to, especially when you talk about NIL and the future of college athletics, I think college teams are really, and athletic departments and ADs are really going to have to think about, who do we hire in our head of communications roles? Historically, it was always, hey, let's get someone with comms pedigree from a 75-year-old Fortune 500 company. The problem with that way of thinking is, though the way corporate communications exist, it's very bureaucratic, it's very procedural, it's very hierarchical, and it's slow. And so today's media is all about direct access, just-in-time media, if you will, and the ability to sort of have your finger on the pulse directly through the eyes and through the lens of the player. And so I think a lot of ADs are going to have to really rethink their comm strategy, not just how they do social media, but actually how they do sort of traditional comms, both audio as well as visual.
Yeah. It's such an interesting landscape to navigate, right? And we are, the new kid in school, the new kids on the block, as we get into this space. And it's been so fun getting to work closer with these teams. But it's very interesting about how we show the value we bring while being new.
Right.
Also being very different than the traditional old media landscape, but being something that fans want. And I mean, that's the point of media, right? It's for the fans, essentially. Like, you don't want to just write a piece that, oh, well, we're legitimate, but no one's reading us. So how legitimate really are you? And we see, everyone's been saying for years how the newspaper industry is dying. And I think they're catching on a little bit to get caught up, but it's still, I mean, let's be real, if we're talking to LA fans in the 18 to 25 demographic, I don't think many of them are saying their number one news source is the LA Times. I'm sure
No, not at all.
it's the Athletic. It's hopefully us. It's even, some of the other
TikTok.
fan sites out there.
Instagram. It's
TikTok.
actually all of those things as the medium through
Yeah.
which they consume their content. And I think one of the things that I think the vernacular and the thinking also has to change, Ryan, is there's still a derogatory term that's out there today, which is called sort of a fan site, and where it's sort of this idea of traditional media versus being a fan site. And guess what? Everything is a fan site. If you have no fans in sports, you have no media in sports. And so I think that we have to sort of change some of our thinking, much in the same way industry has to change its thinking around the future of work and how does work look like in terms of in the office or virtual or what have you. I think sports media is going to have to rethink how you think about consuming content, but also what quality content really is. And this idea of, hey, the LA Times writer is going to come and I'm going to sort of schedule a particular time with this player and go through this process. Those are all things of the past. Those are all pre-internet, pre-web, 1.0 and 2.0 type of thinking. Now in this sort of future of the web, especially when you sort of take into account augmented and virtual reality and the possibility of a metaverse, there's just really needs to be a lot of forward thinking for these schools. And so, the USCs and the UCLAs and the SEC schools and just everybody that really wants to have a legitimate seat at the table of national championship contention in college is really going to have to up their game from a communication standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, we see now, Jamal, how many, I don't know if I'd call it breaking news, but how many news stories get picked up by old media, but they're picking it up from a podcast. Or, I mean, I think of specifically I Am Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall, and always has a great slew of guests. And he had Sean McVay on his show like last week. And then there were articles written about that interview on I Am Athlete podcast. USA Today, I have a lot of respect for USA Today, but I mean, a lot of their model is just picking stuff from social media or other podcasts, and then they publish content about that. So it's the whole model is just so different, and it's time for everyone to adapt and realize, like, okay, this is here. It's not like coming, it's here, and get on board. So, but that's
24/7 news, Ryan, and that's I think the brilliance of something like Twitter, right? Where it's like you can sort of it's just in time information and sort of an understanding of what's really going on, whereas the historical LA Times, USA Today, so forth, were really built on a pre-social media model where I consume my news through only a handful of channels at only a handful of times. I have limited choice in terms of what I can consume. And so then I can kind of control the pipes and I can control the delivery of that news. Now, today, everyone can get news from everywhere. And not only is everyone a consumer of news, but everyone can potentially be a producer of news as well. And so you're in this totally decentralized model, which has its own challenges around, reputation and credibility and so forth. But you have to be able to sort of navigate that. And I think athletic departments are also going to really need to think about this, especially when you overlay that with NIL and endorsement opportunities now. How do you make your players accessible? How do you empower your players to really sort of maximize their value both on and off the field?
Yeah, 100%. So you used to have the newsroom, right? And now this is the newsroom. I mean, there is no
newsroom. Exactly.
That's the newsroom. So, all right, well, let's get into Chris Sims' football list and then Phil Steele's All-American list. We got about 13 minutes or so to dive into these. So definitely want to get our takes on this. Chris Sims, I won't read the entire, he does a 40 list. I think he's actually talking about it on his show today, I believe. He put the list out on Twitter, but I think he'll break it down himself on whatever his show is. I don't follow him enough to know, to be honest with you, but I'll just, what do you think, Jamal? Should I just read the top 10, or do you want to just read some outliers that are interesting? Okay. So I'll go from 10 down. So 10, he has Lamar Jackson, 9, Dak Prescott, 8, Tom Brady, 7, Russell Wilson, 6, Matthew Stafford, 5, Aaron Rodgers, 4, Joe Burrow, 3, Justin Herbert, 2, Patrick Mahomes, and number 1 on Chris Sims' quarterback list, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So I'll just toss it to you, Jamal. Give me your reaction to that 10, and we'll break it down from there.
Sims has gotten a lot of heat over the last few days over this list, and I think rightfully so. But I think that there's a question here of, is this the top 10 today? Or is this sort of the top 10 in terms of quarterbacks where you would want to start your franchise with over the next 5 years? And if it's over the next 5 to 7 years, then there's a little bit more credibility to this list. But if it's who are the best quarterbacks today, he's just so far off. I mean, anyone who has Tom Brady at 8 doesn't really understand football. Anyone who's got Rodgers at 5 doesn't understand football. And truth be told, I think we love Josh Allen. He's definitely in that top 4 to 7 range. But to have him all the way at number 1, I think is a stretch. And so I think those are the 3 things that really jump out to me at first glance. Ryan, to me, I think, there's sort of a top 6 or 7 quarterbacks, and then there's sort of a next 5 to 6, and then it's kind of everybody else. And I think that top 6 list really obviously is Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady, Allen, Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Burrow. To me, those are kind of the top 7. And then I think you got the next group in terms of Stafford and Dak and Lamar, and Kyler, and Deshaun, and then it's kind of everybody else to me. So I think there's a couple of glaring omissions here, especially at the top.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't hate it as much as others. I agree. I would not have Allen 1. Again, the Brady, I've always gotten debates about Brady, and I think 8's definitely too low. But if it's based on him just believing there's going to be a drop off. If you're basing it off last year, obviously Brady is not 8. I mean, he put up over 5,000 yards and was in MVP talks.
In yards and touchdowns. So
yeah, exactly. So it's not last year. But if it's based on him believing, which, Brady is turning 46, like maybe he thinks he's going to hit that drop off this year, which it doesn't seem like he will, but you never know. When it will happen, it will happen. And so that I get. Again, I wouldn't put him there, but I get it. And the Rodgers 5 thing, that may just come down to the lack of playoff success. Again, I don't agree with it. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I don't agree with it, but I get it. Maybe it's just the fact that he hasn't been able to get over that hump when it really matters. He's a great regular season QB, but is he better than that because of what we've seen in the playoffs? But, Justin Herbert, as great as he is, he hasn't played a playoff game yet. So it's not like we can necessarily use that argument. So it's interesting, but I don't hate it. I definitely would have the order a little differently. As much as I think Mahomes last year showed that he is human, whereas before that, it seemed like it was Mahomes and then everybody else. You could still have Brady just because he's the GOAT in that, and Brady did beat him in the Super Bowl. But I think last year, Mahomes did show that he was human. There was a way to beat him. He had some very lackluster performances, obviously completely shut down in that playoff game against Burrow in the second half. But I'd still say he's probably going into this year, probably number 1. But I mean, number 2 isn't bad. You could go Rodgers 1, Mahomes 2. So I don't know. I don't hate it, but yeah, I like that he has Stafford at 6, but I don't think he really is 6. He's probably, like you said, after that 8, 9 spot is probably a much better spot for him. And I know he just won the Super Bowl, and we love Matthew Stafford. We cover the Rams. I love Matthew Stafford on this team and this offense, but you got to think about it too. When it comes down to, a 2-minute drive, everything on the line, do you want him over, these other 6 or 7 guys? And, he did it in the Super Bowl. So it's hard to argue against that, but how much do you put that over Herbert or Burrow or who he beat or Mahomes or this or that? It's a fun debate.
Yeah, Ryan, I think it's a really fun debate. It's a great point. Obviously, we're LA Football Network, and so it's great to have 2 elite quarterbacks kind of in that top 10, top 12 range. I do think Stafford is high. I think that, in a 2-minute drive, there's 7 guys that I would clearly want above Stafford in any sort of a 2-minute drive. And, we forget this. But even in the Super Bowl, Ryan, 4th and 1, game on the line, Sean McVay did not put the ball in the hands of Matthew Stafford. That cannot be overstated. It was an end around to his best player, Cooper Kupp. And you have to wonder, 4th and 1, if that's Brady, if that's Mahomes, we've seen it time and again. Andy Reid salting a game away on 4th and 1, 4th and 2 with Mahomes rolling out and finding Tyreek Hill, and Brady so many times on 4th and 1, Rodgers as well. Hard to really put Stafford in that ultra elite category when he hasn't really had the ball with the game on the line in the most critical of moments. I mean, even in that playoff run, and I nothing against Matthew Stafford. I love Matthew Stafford, but we also have to be fair. I mean, do you really recall too many clutch throws? There's sort of the one throw against Tampa, right right at the end of the game on that coverage bust to Kupp. Outside of that, I can't even really remember anything memorable that Stafford did in that playoff run, truth be told. So Stafford is a great quarterback, but to have him as high as Sims has it, I think is a stretch.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I think his comeback against the Niners, the NFC Championship, was pretty great. I get what you're saying about the 4th and 1, but we could look at Brady when they won a Super Bowl because of a James White handoff for a 2-point conversion. They put the ball in James White's hand, who probably could have won the MVP, but
Ryan,
they gave it to Brady.
He was down 28-3 and he brought them back.
Yeah, of course.
Back. I mean, Stafford is the most expensive bus rider in the NFL. He's probably the most overrated player in the NFL, but that doesn't mean he's a bad player. He's fabulous. He's terrific. But, again, the anchors of the Rams are Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford is a role player. And so I think it's hard to sort of have a role player be, top 6.
Yeah. Yeah. And before everyone freaks out there, remember Jamal is saying he's still top 10. He's not saying he's 20.
Oh, yeah. He's
still top 10.
Still top 10, top 12. No question about it. There's no anti-Matthew Stafford here at all. But facts are still the facts. There is a level, I think there's one level above that Stafford isn't quite in that ultra elite company.
Yes. So before we move on, since I have the list up here, you can see any other surprises to you, having, again, I don't hate it, as I know it's got a ton of hate, but I think having Carr 11, Murray 12, Matt Ryan 14, Tannehill 15, Cousins. I mean, I don't think that is out of the realm of where they kind of land in the NFL. I think the real thing comes down to
Ryan Watson's the wild card, because obviously with the year long, he hasn't played in a year. He may not play for another year with the suspension. But when Watson is in his groove and really humming, you can make the argument that Watson is in that top 6 group. So he's a bit of a wild card there, but I have no problem putting him at 13 because of just the unknown. And then obviously there's, I think 10, 11, 12 is also interesting. Murray has all of the skills, but kind of the intangibles, the leadership, the toughness is much in question at times. And Lamar Jackson, as great as he is, a league MVP, it really feels like the Ravens can only win one way, that they have to be sort of leading in games and being able to run the ball and predicate off a play action, that it's still very hard for the Ravens to come from behind in key moments and in playoff games. And so I think the 10, 11, 12 is very interesting as well.
Yeah, I agree. And if I was making a list, I wouldn't even have Watson on it until we know what's happening with him. Because if he's playing, and we won't get into all the off the field stuff, but if he's just purely football, he is a top 5 talent. But just who knows if he's playing and having a year off, and he's gonna miss, I think, at least half the year. I think they're gonna give him at least half a year suspension. So last question, Jamal, and then we got about 2 minutes to go over Phil Steele's All-American list, but just want to at least end with this. Herbert, is he top 5 to you?
Yeah, I think he's top 5 to 7. No question about it. He's in that elite group where you want the ball in his hands with the game on the line, and you can legitimately build around him to not just win a Super Bowl, but win multiple Super Bowls, for sure.
Yep, he's for sure top 5 to me. I think he can play into that top 3 this year if he has another really good, outstanding year 3 in the system. What he did in that last game of the season, and I know they ended up losing, but to bring the Chargers back down 15 with under 6 minutes left, converting 5 fourth down conversions, that was just stuff of Elway legacy. Just unbelievable what he was able to do.
Quarterback in LA, period.
Yeah. I don't think many Rams fans would argue that either. I think, again, kudos to Stafford, what he did. He is great. He is top 10, won the Super Bowl. He brought his team back in the Super Bowl and in the NFC Championship game. But it'd be hard to argue that he is better right now than Justin Herbert and the future of what Justin Herbert is. So, all right, Jamal. Yeah, we got like 2 minutes, so it's got to be quick. But Phil Steele came out with his All-American preseason team. I'll just kind of list only first-team All-American out here in LA was Jordan Addison, receiver. You have no one on the second team. You have Caleb Williams, quarterback for SC, making the third team. And then Zach Charbonnet, UCLA running back, making the fourth team, as well as Andrew Voorhees, offensive guard for USC, making the fourth team as well. I don't think I missed anyone. But yeah, your quick thoughts on that list, and if it's fair, if it's concerning at all, or if it's just a preseason All-American list. Who really cares?
No, I think it's pretty fair, Ryan. Addison on the first team, I think, is a reputation. Obviously, he's the reigning Biletnikoff Award winner, and he's a proven commodity. He deserves to be there. I don't think Addison will finish first team All-American because he's going to have to share the ball with so many playmakers at SC, and I think it's going to impact him statistically. Caleb Williams is certainly a top 3 talent at the quarterback position with Young and Stroud. I think those are the 3 most dynamic athletes to play quarterback. I think that's very fair. I think Zach Charbonnet on the fourth team is actually too low. And especially when you look at first and second team, Bijan Robinson, Charbonnet had more yards last year than Bijan Robinson. And when you look at Tre'Davion Henderson, second team, phenomenal back. But I think Charbonnet is a dark horse to finish first team All-American, especially when you look at how his usage rate in a Chip Kelly system, being the premier back and not having to share the backfield with Britton Brown.
100% agree. I can't forget this. I didn't say any defense. Tui Pelotu for USC was third team All-American on the defensive side. So, but yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think Charbonnet is criminally just getting overlooked right now. You know, your classic East Coast bias for college football out here, and especially considering he plays at UCLA and not SC, who's been the talk of the college football world for the last 4 months or so. Charbonnet, he did finish first team All Pac-12 or first team All-American in the Pac-12 rankings for Phil Steele. But I think he should be much higher in the overall All-American rankings. And I think he'll prove it, which is all that really matters. When it's said and done, I think he will be the best or top 2 back in the nation when this is all said and done. So, well, it always goes by fast, Jamal. Always goes by fast. But that is all the time we have. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the LA Football Show. Jamal, as always, thank you for your time, insight, eloquent speaking points. Appreciate you as always.
Thanks so much, Ryan, and hope everyone has a terrific weekend and see everybody next week.
Yes, everyone enjoy your weekend. Have a very happy Father's Day for all the fathers out there. Whether it's golfing, barbecuing. Thank you. Yeah, it's only my second one, so it'll be fun. We'll probably just relax and I'll probably watch some golf or something. So, but everyone out there enjoy. This is the LA Football Show. For Ryan Dyrud, for Jamal Madni. Talk to you all next week.